Morning, everybody. Good morning. I hope everybody slept well. Yes, indeed. We thank God for that. And we pray for another successful day. I think we shall start. I apologize. We are starting about 15 minutes late, but we shall make up for the time along the way. So my responsibility is to call the meeting to the way it's going to go. We're going to have a bit of a review and feedback from day one. You are going to do the review and feedback because I did my review yesterday. And then our chairperson will make some remarks. She's here. Then we'll zip quickly into the guest speaker's presentation. Today, Professor Michael Poku-Buensi will be speaking to us about getting around a congested city, the woes of the urban dweller. And as I promised you yesterday, I think he's got a visual to put us in the right frame of mind for the presentation. Next time, if he talks to me, I'll also give him my journey from a certain part of Accra to center of Accra every morning, and then we'll see the woes of the urban dweller. But there is a lovely presentation, a thought-provoking presentation awaiting us. Professor Poku-Buensi, he will speak to us for about 40 minutes. Is that okay? Is 40 minutes okay? Yeah. And then we'll have a plenary discussion. Then we will have a snack break, and then we will break into the side events, which you self-select to participate in. After that, we will come together and then receive the feedback from your reflections in the side events. The feedback from the side events will come after lunch. Then after we've received all of the feedback, we will have the third guest's presentation, and that will be on the Ghana Sustainable City Strategy. We will zoom in quickly on a panel discussion to unpack the strategy. You'll make a bit of input on it, and then we will be ready for the closing ceremony. So today is a heavy day, but it is not an impossible day. It's a very thought-provoking day, and it is also geared to, generating some next steps that we can quickly move forward on and begin to initiate the change that we want to see. So let's zip into the review session. I think you can see on the screen that I'm encouraging you to use your technical electronic capacities. The Slido, I want you to use your Slidos and answer the question, what was your major learning from day one of the forum? What was your major learning from day one of the forum? So start harvesting that and putting it in quickly so that we can have a bit of a talk around it and still be able to just steal just 10 minutes from Professor Poku-Buensi. So just quickly wrap that in and put it in. After that, I will just go around the room and harvest a couple, because not everybody is very technical. Harvest a couple, we'll have a bit of discussion around that and move forward. I hope that's okay with everybody. Good. Indeed, I have the mic, so if it's okay or it's not okay, I have finished. Right, very quickly, let's put that and have a bit of discussion. Yeah. Your major learning from yesterday. I'll give myself just about 5 minutes and I'll start harvesting from the bodies in the room. I think yesterday they said something about doing the QR in order to be able to access the Slido today. Those independence era people who are having problem with their QRs. I think there are a number of young people, snazzy young people, who can help you. Right. Okay. So I'm sure people have decided or have arrived at what they learned. Maybe let me just go around the room a wee bit and see who will share with us very quickly. Yes. Can I have a hand? Yes. My colleague from the private sector, the social activist. Yes, yes. What was your key learning from yesterday?
Francis Ofoskobia is my name.
Yes, indeed.
From the private sector, building construction, climate change advocacy, and social entrepreneur. Yesterday, one of my key takeaways was that in 1980, urban growth was 4 million. 2020, it became 14 million. So it's growing rapidly, and therefore, we cannot be sitting just like that to look at this growth. We have to put things together to match the growth rate. Another thing I learned is that we need to have nature-based solutions when it comes to the climate change and saving the environment from climate change issues and disasters. Right. And the best thing I had yesterday was that there was one of the panelists, he said he knows about 110 financing sources for climate change activity. I couldn't sleep because of that information, so I'm ready to connect with that man. Since I am a climate change advocate, we need to locate where the money is so that we bring it down to Ghana to boost the socioeconomic nature of the country.
Right. Thank you very much. I'll find the man. He caused some consternation yesterday, so I'll find him to come and expatiate. Okay. Yes, who else will give me a bit of feedback from yesterday?
National developmental projects so that the general public would be well informed on best practices in the implementation of such huge projects so that we don't open up the airwaves to the other actors, the social commentators, and then the political actors to cloud the airwaves and then get people to, I think they even get some of them confused, especially when we move, when we are moving towards the election this year, it's going to be projects, how much, 3-tier, 4-tier, whose budget was more than whose budget and all that, without understanding the scope of activities.
Right.
So the professional bodies should come together to prefer their professional views on some of these huge projects so that it can inform the general public,
yes,
so that they will be well informed. And once you are well informed, you take good decisions.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. So we can even sanitize the discussion, if you like. Yes, can I have another learning? Yes, please, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Emmanuel Atiana from UN Habitat.
Good.
One of the key takeaways yesterday was a question I kept asking myself the whole evening. Planting a tree. A very, very simple thing. Working from an organization that is currently revising Ghana's housing profile and also working on a project to decarbonize the built environment. We use a lot of trees which are eco-friendly in construction. My question is, if we have to be spending a lot of money to decarbonize our environment, vis-a-vis planting a tree, which would take a very short time to grow and is eco-friendly, which one should we take?
Right.
I would advocate strongly that we all take steps individually to plant just a tree a year, and Ghana will be a very good place for us all to live in. Thank you.
Fabulous. Okay. Can I have one more? And then I can go to my Slido screen. One more learning. Yes, come to Mr. Passa because he and I were having a discussion about learnings from yesterday. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much. One thing that came to the fore yesterday was the issue of communication. I call it development communication. It's very important that in our spheres of endeavor, we should ensure that we communicate to people in a more simpler terms than to be using big jargons. And the other thing that came up was the issue of devolution. And it is important that funds are transferred to the sub-national levels. And if that happens, the triple Fs must be adhered to. What is it? Funds follow functions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now let me look at my screen. Or are you going to say something? Now we can read. Okay, but you can read. Oh. We know our seniors and our elders and our betters. So yes.
I'm quoting a statement made by the UN rep.
Good.
He said, we can talk big, but always the challenge is in the execution.
Okay.
And I believe that is our problem. How to execute what we are thinking and what we have thought about and what we have put on paper.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now let's take a look at what's on the Slido. Maybe let's go up to the very top of it. Okay, or wherever. Let's begin. There is ensuring strategic communications of our urban. Okay, right. As a country, we should focus on investing in our green environment as well as ensuring strategic communication of our urban situations to the public, taking into consideration the various stakeholders, community members, chiefs, etc. But the media should lead this advocacy. There's the need to identify and work with relevant stakeholders in addressing Ghana's urban challenge. There's the need to be mindful of gender and other the social categories to ensure social inclusion. I'm adding to it. Yeah. There were indications about a disconnect between policy formulation and policy implementation. The case of LADMA and enforcement of planning laws. Okay, shall we go on? Yeah. Commitment from political actors is key to achieving our goal. Yes, can I have another? Involving the grassroots, gender inclusivity, nature-based solutions, sponge cities, community-based approaches, and the role of NCC in dissemination of knowledge. We need nature-based solutions to curb climate change. Tree planting, social planning, grassroots engagement in climate communication, and sponge city. Mama, your sponge city. Oh. Engagement of traditional leaders in urban development issues. We need to change our approach towards development by engaging in more enforcement of law and order. Initiate communication agenda before project or program implementation. This will whip up interest. Urbanization challenges do not need evidence, or policies are made to deal with it. It's really that NCC can aid in promoting the Sponge Cities project. Walk the talk. 50% of 2012 NUP was not achieved. And then also, I personally suggest that Ghana makes NDPC an independent body throughout its activities with a strong link to the Ministry of Local Government, Decentralization and Rural Development, and the engagement of traditional leaders in urban development issues. So, enforcement of law and order to facilitate our approach towards development. So these are some of the things that people have been thinking about, and they do reflect the issues that have been raised orally as well. Urban growth, unrelenting, rapid, and we need to be intentional in our approaches. Nature-based solutions, looking for the finding sources, professional, leveraging the strength that the professional bodies build. Bring so that we can sanitize our discussion, getting rid of a lot of the emotive, sensational, and political dimensions, the debate that we hear on our airwaves, and being serious, technical, and professional, getting that in dimension. Planting a tree a year, communication, development communication, simple and accessible, devolution, funds following the funds following the functions, and also moving from just talking big into focusing on the execution. So those are some of the lessons that were learned yesterday. Thank you. My chair, do you want to say a couple of words, and then we will set the ball rolling?
Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We are back here today after an extremely interesting session yesterday, and we've done a lot of overview of yesterday's event, so I'm not going to go into it too much, but just to highlight that at the end of the day, it looks like we are all on the same page. If you remember, when I gave my remarks yesterday, I said that the two things I wanted to see, one was that we should work with the individual, the family, and community at the center of all the deliberations we are doing and all the planning we are doing. And that seemed to resonate over time. Even when the experts were up there on the panel, they raised that. The second thing I highlighted was the fact that we should embrace nature, tree planting. There are places where all pavements are shaded by trees. As you walk along, the roads are built with pavements and there are trees, so everybody walks under a shade for the most part. That sort of thing is connected to being human-centered, because then you are concerned about the health, exposure to excessive heat of people and all of that. So in doing these things, we should look at even going down and making sure that some of these things are always there. Yesterday, I was fascinated by the presentation on the NUP and the fact that 50% of its objectives was not achieved. I was fascinated because I don't know if there was a deep assessment into why what was not achieved was not achieved. Because if not, we will make the same mistakes with the current one that is under review, the current draft. There's an issue that we have been overlooking. We always skirt around those issues. We all know, but we always skirt around. And today, I want us to be bold and address some of those issues. There's an issue of power in this country that nobody wants to address. Who has the power? Who's wielding power? Who's exerting power? And at the end of the day, most of the times, that will be the fundamental problem that if we resolve, everything else will fall into place. Because look at what happened yesterday. There was no lack of expertise. There was no lack of, progressive policy thinking or policy making. But there was a gentleman here who spoke about even one of his engineers, a state employee, trying to do his work and being arrested. And when it comes to that part of the conversation, everybody just looks away. Everybody just looks away. But to be honest, if we don't address those things at all levels, not just in this room, in this country, right? If we don't address that thing we all know is there, nothing is going to work, because it is not for lack of expertise, lack of knowledge, or lack of willing hands, actually. It is because of that something that we all know is there that nobody wants to talk about. So I'll say a few. Traditional power, political power. These are the things that underpin the problems of this country, especially when it comes to land and the important things we are talking about today. Land guards, who's hiring them, who is arming them. I mean, if a whole city's plan can be derailed because some men are armed, standing on places and stealing state property blatantly in broad daylight, and nobody can do or say anything about it, we should not waste our time in rooms like this. And we have to be honest with ourselves. I want 2 case studies. I want to challenge this forum to undertake 2 case studies. What happened with Ashimota Forest? Do a case study. Let us all know the truth. What happened with the East Legon Green Belt? Because, I don't see the Ashimota Forest, so I hear of what went on there. But we all saw the East Legon Green Belt. Initially, it was just the police station that was stationed there. Today, the entire thing is gone. please, somebody should fund a case study. Let's know who took it, who rezoned it, whether it was done legally, illegally. Let's have it. That's where the problem is. When I was in Achimota School, we had school farms right on the other side, across the road from the hospital. And we all used to go to the farm and do our portion. That whole school farm area is now a residential place with very big, nice buildings. Who owns them? Who sold it? Anyway, I hope that today we'll make some time to address real issues and stop skirting around things. Otherwise, we will do a fine job in this room, but you know, life will go on as usual. Let's challenge ourselves a bit. Somebody just said something about MMDCs and you know, they are the fact that they are so emasculated. They can't really exercise real power because they are not elected. You know, that should tell you that everything in this country is connected. If there's talk about, oh, let's elect MMDCs, and you say, oh, well, that doesn't concern me, I've got nothing to do with that. Today, you see that it's connected to everything. If we are not electing heads of local government, then the heads of local government are not accountable to the people in the community that they serve. It is a very simple thing. We all know it. When the day comes and that discussion is being held, don't say that, as for me, this has nothing to do, it's not my concern, and go and sit in your corner. It is your concern. If your head of local government is appointed and, you know, therefore, normally, naturally, we'll really look to the center rather than to the people, how do you expect things to get done? Anyway, that's outside of the scope of this particular engagement. But please, let's have these discussions a little bit, not a lot. No, I talk about these things freely, but the power dynamics and the case studies on Achimota Forest and East Legon Greenbelt. Please, somebody should do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Give her a warm round of applause. The issues, the power dynamics, who has the power, who's wielding it, and in what ways, and the implications for policy implementation, and the case studies that should actually delve into how these things work in practice, how they are linked together in practice. Food for thought for all of us. Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll see how this day goes and see if we can invest some energy into considering some of these critical underlying issues. Madam, with your kind permission, I want to zip into the technical session. Our guest speaker is a professor of planning at the Department of Planning at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. He's an urban and transportation planner. Has a decade of experience teaching, researching, providing consultancy, and mentorship. His research interests include transportation planning, urban and land use planning, and their interrelationships. He also researches climate change, housing, and urban resilience, and is currently the Deputy Director of the School of Graduate Studies, Ken UST, and is a fellow of the Ghana Institute of Planning. Prof, my driver says I should make a request of you. When he heard that the gentleman who is giving us the lead presentation today had a strong investment in transportation. He said the aboboyas that are on our streets, they appear to be solving a transportation gap. I mean, ferrying women and their goods. You know, we use the, let me betray myself. We use the Choco high street route, and, you know, pinpoint, then there's the junk, and then going into Gamashi, all that. I mean, he tends to use that route a lot. So he says I should ask you, are they solving a problem, providing a transportation service, or are they part of the problem, harassing him when I'm yelling at him that I am late and we should get to where we are going? He says I should add that for him this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Michael Poku Wensi. Prof. Prof, let's try 40 minutes and see for your actual presentation.
Yeah, it's very serious because nowadays the traffic is very huge in town. Our road here is very serious. As I'm talking to you now, I bought my new rim. That's 1,005. Because of the road, you just fall in the pothole and then your rim got spoiled. It's very bad. It's really costing us a lot. So if something can be done about it, we are pleading to them that they should do something about it for us.
Driving through Accra is so hectic because of the traffic issues and the roads. The roads are very bad in Accra. So you end up all the time going to shop and stuff. And the traffic issue to us, I'm speaking to you now, myself, I am a online driver. In a day, we'll be given some campaign to complete because of the challenges. You are not even able to complete the number of
It's very serious because nowadays the traffic is very huge in town. Our road here is very serious. As I'm talking to you now, I bought my new rim. That's 1,005. Because of the road, you just fall in the pothole and then your rim got spoiled. It's very bad. It's really costing us a lot. So if something can be done about it, we are pleading to them that they should do something about it for us.
Driving through Accra is so hectic because of the traffic issues and the roads. The roads are very bad in Accra. So you end up all the time going to shop and stuff. And the traffic issue to us, I'm speaking to you now, myself, I am a online driver. In a day, we'll be given some campaign to complete because of the challenges. You are not even able to complete the number of, let's say, trips given to you in a day. It's a very big problem.
It's not all that easy because of the road and the traffic. Sometimes you could be in the traffic for long, and you know our work is about sitting, and you'll be very tired. Yeah, so basically driving in Accra, not all that easy. The way the road is bad, it also make the cars do spoil easily. So that one also affect us as the money that we should get, the income. It affect the income.
Sisi apa dia ya kwan dia nye ebi akanda kwan aso ye ndia ye kakra eko 37 kwan no. Na so en kankan ne insawam kwan no ama saman poku ase kwan ne eko insawem no. Onum de obekọ aba no mfuturo be ye honam chale ukoye delivery wo ba aju ba fi bedwale eza to delivery so. Ekwan ne de nye insawam kwan tumi no na meka ne se me hu so mo ye kwan no so mo nya anya wie ye. Nti bia mo be ye wie na se be boa ye na nde be boa ye mpa. Travel tumi ma da muni na me ye ejuma na me ye ejuma me ensape. There's a deliver my mom for me and Sape.
Accra car cannot easy in terms of traffic. Any be a person we rounds be CCA back you may be a won't mean because one station answer one road block here it will affect the whole Accra. Until Accra, nothing a year din. Ye quite also be brave, I say.
Please, good morning to everyone. I'll can somebody just control it from there for me? Right, so I will please, Madam Chairperson, I will crave your indulgence and rely on the protocols established yesterday so that we can continue. Okay. So I will begin my presentation with this preamble, and it reads, cities like us, humans, are living organisms, okay? And as living organisms, they are born, they grow, and they die. You know, when you have a child and you have not properly taken care of that child, what you see is that that child will grow. The child will grow, but end up becoming somebody that you may not want. So when they are properly groomed, these cities will end up becoming centers of resilience, centers of innovation, and our socioeconomic development. On the other hand, if they are not, then they will become chaotic. They will become areas where our lifestyles will largely be influenced by the character traits that these cities exhibit, and eventually lead us to places that we don't want to be. So if we understand this preamble, then we have a responsibility to make sure that the cities, our urban spaces, are areas where development can take place, areas where innovation can take place, and can promote our well-being. Transportation, the next slide, please. Transportation, as we know, plays a critical role in any nation's development. They are important, as you've read severally, for the socioeconomic development of every society. And there have been countless literature to support this assertion. And in trying to meet our daily needs, we move, and that brings in mobility. And mobility is also a vital functionality of the city. So when you have an efficient transport system, we expect that people can move freely within that space. And that is the means through which we are able to undertake our various economic activities. Okay. All right, so cities and traffic issues have been closely intertwined for many years. Those of you as who took courses in transport planning, they will tell you that transport is a function of land use. So people move to activity areas simply because of the need to meet a certain needs, and they do that using the transport systems available. Now, the factors that facilitate movement are the same factors that attract traffic, and by extension, the congestion that we experience in our cities. And so if you understand the relationship, then it's easy for you to plan appropriately for them. Traffic congestion, according to several studies, okay, has been a global concern for many cities, for city managers, for academics, for policymakers, and all of that. And it's both in the north and the south. So it's an issue that concerns everybody because it affects our everyday activity. Jones et al. In 2014 revealed that despite the transport infrastructure deficiencies, and the video showed some of them, okay, congested roads are considered the most pressing problem that we have. And they go further to relate it that this problem surpasses the problem of leaking sewage, power outages. We experienced power outages not too long ago. We saw the stress that we went through. But we are told that congestion is a much bigger problem than any of that. Okay, studies have also highlighted the fact that urban traffic congestion is predicted to worsen in the future. So the phenomenon that the video showed, the phenomenon that each and every one of us has experienced, is going to get worse. And so we have a responsibility to make sure that we respond appropriately. Mahindra in 2008 highlighted some of the major problems in terms of traffic congestion using one city, Sao Paulo in Brazil, to depict the problem. And he said that Sao Paulo is considered the worst when it comes to congestion, and that people spend an average between 2 to 3 hours stuck in traffic. What it means is that if you read further, they are not moving, they are just stationed for 2 to 3 hours before they can move. Again, it's been reported that in China, a city called Hebei, I don't know whether I pronounce it well, experienced the most severe traffic jam ever recorded, and that was 100 kilometers. So 100 kilometers, we are talking about going from Accra past probably in Samom to home. That is the traffic stretch. So the ones we saw in the video, if you compare to what has been recorded, then maybe we are not that bad. And so we need to think through, especially knowing that the projection is that in the future, this is going to get worse. In Africa, several studies again have been conducted. In South Africa, we are told that it's also worse in the city of Johannesburg and some parts. If you go to Nigeria, okay, we are told that it has the worst. If you take some of the major highways in Nigeria, Lagos has that problem as well. But if you relate that to Ghana, okay, again, a lot of studies have been done on congestion, and what they came up with is that almost all our major highways, our major cities, Kumasi, Accra, Takoradi, Cape Coast, Tamale, are experiencing congestion. Those who, maybe Accra is obvious, but those who know Kumasi very well, when I got to the university in first year, I could go to Edum and back in less than 7 minutes, 10 minutes, you are back. At the moment, if you want to go, then you should prepare to spend some hours in traffic. So what I'm going to do, as depicted by the topic, is to talk about the congestion situation. And if you're an urban dweller, the woes that you have to go through almost a daily basis as a result of the phenomenon. And then probably talk about a few areas that we think moving on we can place some emphasis on. So first, what is congestion? In literature, we are told that congestion is essentially the imbalance between inflows and outflow of vehicles on a specific road corridor. So when there's imbalance, naturally an output will come, and that output or that phenomenon is what they describe as congestion. So every road has a design capacity. The engineers will tell you that. So whenever you exceed that capacity, then you are going to experience congestion. They describe it also, Olagunju also describes it as a situation where the urban road network can no longer accommodate the volume of traffic. And again, this is also related to the design capacity that we have. Mensah et al. Also said that it's the condition where road networks, as usage increases, resulting in slower speed, longer travel times, and increased vehicular queues. So that is what they describe as congestion. Fleet et al. Also has argued that congestion is and continue to be an inevitable consequence of limited transport facilities, such as road space, parking areas, road signals, and effective traffic management. So everybody is trying to define it. And I'm sure those of us here are really not bothered about what that definition is. We are more interested in the experiences, because day in, day out, we go through that. So whenever we talk about traffic congestion, the first and obvious thing that we see is that we are not able to attain the maximum speed that we have. And here in an urban area, we are talking about 50 kilometers per hour. We are not able to do that. We spend hours in traffic, traveling, and then we also experience the problem of queuing. In African cities, okay, like I said, in Nigeria, and I use Nigeria as just one case, is that there have been numerous studies that try to talk about congestion. And they report that the phenomenon is more prevalent on the major Nigerian cities, highways, particularly in Lagos and Abuja. And then went on to talk about the fact that the intercity traffic congestion between the two major cities of Lagos and Ibadan and Lokoja and Abuja are very intense, especially even on weekends. And this is a common problem across most of the African cities. Okay, and what did they attribute the phenomenon to? They said lane indiscipline, high traffic density, limited road network, poor traffic management, among others, are the reasons why they experience the phenomenon of traffic in Nigeria. Now, this transportation crisis primarily stems from the fact that we don't have inadequate policies, and also the planning regime of these areas are somehow described as weak, and they lead to the problems that we face on a daily basis. So, because the focus is on our woes, I want to talk about them. But what I want to add or say before continuing is that these woes that I'm going to describe are we are so used to it that it's become part of our lives. So we don't see them as problems again. It's become our daily routine, and whenever you get used to a phenomenon, you take it as if it is normal. The woes that I'm going to describe, some are very obvious to you, but there are some too that are not. And maybe by the time that we get to the end, we'll appreciate, and my focus will be the non-obvious ones that usually an urban dweller has to go through. It is widely documented that whenever there is congestion, people are impacted and they go through some difficulties. So the first one is that the transport system or the regime that we have will not be suitable for people. And you heard people talking about the difficulties that they have. Then also you find out that there's a cost burden. Somebody said he goes to the shop always, meaning to go and buy a spare part. Then the travel times, and then the danger associated with travel. These are all the things that we are familiar with, but in more detail. Public transport services in Ghana, since we decided to decentralize and then liberalize our economy, has been largely driven by the informal sector. So we have the trotros, we have the taxis. They are the ones that are running the service. And they do so because the state has failed to provide that service. All the attempts that the state has made in providing public transport has not been successful. You can think of OSA, you can think of New Plan, you can think of now Metro Mass struggling. And then, so because of the vacuum, the private sector has taken over. And we all need to understand that there cannot be vacuum in space. Whenever there is a vacuum, something takes over. And so when Doc raised the issue about what your driver said, it's because there's a vacuum. And when there's a vacuum, people take over. And the motorcycles, the tricycles have taken over because there's that vacuum. Whatever they are doing is to provide a certain service that society needs but has not been given. And so, in doing so, they have rather also created some additional problems, which we can talk of later. So the unreliability of public transport system is because of the fact that we have not been able to properly design a system that responds to the needs of people. Elsewhere, if you have to make a journey, you can sit and plan that I have maybe a class at 10 o'clock. I can leave, the bus comes at 9:15, by 10 o'clock you are there. In Ghana and in most cities in our part of the world, you can't do that. Okay, and that is what we experience. So because of the unreliability of our public transport system, people are gradually shifting to other modes. And one of the obvious things that you see in our urban space is that people are gradually walking. We've done studies in Kumasi, in Accra, where people walk a lot. It's good to walk, It's very good because it's healthy. But the challenge with walking is that we have not made provision for the infrastructure to facilitate the walking. So when you see people walking, and I'm sure all of you who drive, when people are walking and even want to cross the road, they become a nuisance to you. Some of you scream at them. Some of you are very uncomfortable behind your steering wheel because somebody is walking across the road. And it's because the system that needs to move them to meet their mobility needs is not there. And that's why they are doing that. So it's even more serious when you look at the statistics in terms of those who are at a disadvantage when it comes to our public road use. They are the pedestrians. And the Road Safety Authority will tell you that 43% of all the fatalities that we record is as a result of, or is attributed to the collision or the accidents that pedestrians encounter. And to make it more serious, we are told that 31% of these pedestrians are also children. And these children are unable to evaluate risk as they need to do. So by the time you realize they've been knocked down, and that is a big problem. We are told again that between 2014 and 2016, 9% of road casualties recorded in our towns and our cities were involved children below the ages of 16. So this is a serious problem that even the young ones face. So it's a war that the young ones go through. So parents are worried, children are also worried, simply because we have not made the right provision for them. Elsewhere, walking is permissible, cycling is permissible, and I'm here. I remember very well when Prof. Nkum came and was riding cycle on campus, those early days. People thought there was something wrong with him to ride a cycle from the halls of residence too. But it's because the environment that he grew up, spent his years studying, it was permissible. There are protections for them to ride, and it has health benefits. And okay. So I talked about it. We don't have the facilities to protect the pedestrian, and that is one of the problems we have. The obvious one also is increased travel time. People spend longer hours trying to commute. It becomes more problematic when you know that you have deadlines. Now we have Google apps that helps us to move around. So before you leave, you look for the best possible route. It will tell you that in 1 hour you'll be there, so you plan. 10 minutes into the journey, then it updates, 1 hour, 30 minutes. Then you begin to panic. Okay, and this we go through every day. This morning I experienced it myself. It is a big problem for us. And so closely related to that is also the cost that is involved. So psychologically, you are going through a certain state that has become, like I said, very normal to you, and so you don't take it for granted. So we waste valuable time, productive hours, stuck in traffic. So yesterday, somebody told me that even though the norm is to be in traffic for about 2-3 hours, when it rains, it gets worsened. So it's not just about worried about the floods, but also worried about how long you get stuck when it rains. And I'm very sure that most of us here, those who stay in Accra, wish it doesn't rain, so that you will be able to live your life comfortably. Okay, so if you take a typical journey, and I did this 14 kilometers, which should, if you look at the design speed of 50 kilometers per hour, should take us 17 minutes. If you are making a journey of 14 kilometers, on the average, about 17 minutes, you should go to wherever you are going. I tried it yesterday, and I spent 2 hours. And like I've said, it's normal. It's become normal for everybody. Okay, and that is what we do. So, as you may have experienced, and when most of you have done that, longer travel time due to congestion leads to reduced productivity for individuals and businesses. Those of you who don't use the app services, if you even want to pick a taxi driver, depending on the time, the price is different, or the charge is different. Yes, we know that it is permissible, But sometimes you even have to plead with them to move because they will tell you there's so much traffic. And that they are so, sometimes some of them are so cunning that they will take you on the most difficult one just to take your money. And this, people go through a lot. Commuters, the delays in the transportation of goods and services also creates inefficiencies. So you cannot do any meaningful planning. I remember seeing a truckload coming to Accra with plantain, and then there was so much traffic, and I overheard the mate saying that after the difficulties that they've had moving the unripe plantain, by the time they get to Accra, to the center, they will all be ripe. And it's funny, but that is how they describe the problem they know they are going to inherit when they get to the city. The other issue is cost. And this, again, has become normal to most of us. I remember a year ago when I was presenting my inaugural lecture, I said that if you are here and you spend more than 10% of your income, disposable income, on transport, then you are poor. So you need to, and I'm sure most of us do more than that. The cost of fuel, the cost of changing spare parts, as the people talked about in the video, is a problem. And we don't, probably some of us don't even write it. So if you are here and you don't write your expenses on transportation, please start. And I'm sure at a point in time you'll be so scared that you will not write them again. But because you don't write them, you are okay. But it's a big problem for us, okay? And in Accra and Kumasi, studies have established that people spend between 60% and 48.5% of the typical family income moving. So one, we are complaining that the salaries are not enough, but we are also spending as much as 50%, 60% on moving. So you see people now going to jobs to bargain, and they are asking, how much are you giving for TNT? The informal workers, some of them are giving money. Okay, I'm paying you 100 cedis, and I'm adding 50 cedis as TNT, knowing very well that it won't be able to do much. But that is the fact that we have come to realize or accepted the fact that it is expensive to do that. And what we see is that the National Transport Survey revealed that about 20.3% of Ghanaians spend 15% of their income on transportation, household income on transport. And they go further to say that 35% of Ghanaians have always complained about the high cost of movement. So it's a big problem that we need, and it's all because there may be some other reasons, but largely driven by the bottlenecks that we find in our cities. This is particularly pronounced for the middle class, the working class, and they spend on the average almost close to 16% of their income on transport. Those of you who use official vehicles, you may not experience it, but I'm sure the day you park it and go into your own vehicle, you will see how it is. Okay, and so the other one is that there is always a coping mechanism. So when people feel that they are hard pressed, then what they do is that they forfeit some of the trips that they want to make. So before they move, they will take a pen, or they will sink in a pensive mood, sit in a pensive mood, trying to look at trips that they call non-essential trips. Even though ideally they are essential, they will forgo them because they cannot afford that. So households are beginning to move away from some trips that ideally they will want to make because of the cost. And when that happens, they are cut off from the society. They are not able to integrate, and they are not able to take advantages of the opportunities that the city offers them. Okay. The other thing that you see is this, and here is trauma and stress. And for most urban dwellers, this is seen as normal. They don't want to talk about it. They don't even realize it exists. But I'm going to give you a few examples to know that when you do that, then you are actually experiencing trauma and stress. The first thing that you see is that most of you don't sleep, especially those who stay in Accra. By 4 a.m., you should be up. Yesterday, Professor Nkrumah talked about a case about a friend whose children eat breakfast and supper in the vehicle. I've witnessed that when my brother used to be at Christ the King. The children are forced to go for morning mass because the parents will have to drop them and get to the office. So when they close at 3 o'clock, they will play, and then they will go for evening mass. And then 7, 8, the parents will come and pick them and take them home. And by the time they get home, they are asleep. And that is a common practice for most of the young people, simply because the parents, one, are trying to work and make ends meet, but also trying to make sure that they don't get stuck. They can make some savings from fuel and all of that. And that is one thing. The second part is when you have important deadlines to meet, you become anxious. If you are going for an interview, if you have a proposal to submit, and the Google app tells you that it's rerouting because there's a traffic, so extra 1 hour. I'm sure when you experience those moments, if you walk to the nearest hospital to check your pressure, you will see that you are not in the best of frame. To the extent that some of us begin to exhibit certain attitudes. I have had that experience when my kids ask me, "Daddy, why are you shouting at the driver?" Most of us, we end up insulting co-road users, screaming at them. Even when their glasses are up and they can't see what you hear, whatever you are saying, you are shouting. If you go through that, please, you are not far from that. The rest, I won't say it. Sometimes we use languages that are not allowed, even in the presence of our kids. And that is the extent of frustration that we go through every day in our cities. For the public transport, I said there's extortion. So the market is not perfect, and people are taking advantage of it. You find a situation where people leave office late as a strategy to avoid getting stuck. And then, for obvious reasons, high cost of fuel. Then indiscipline. In this part of our world, when people show trafficator that they want to move, you don't want to allow them to move. People don't allow that. They scream, like I said, they insult each other. Sometimes they even get down from their vehicle to fight. People dressed in tie, and they will remove it, throw it this way, and say all the things that they want to say. It is something that all of us go through, but like I said, we have taken it as the norm, but it's not helping us. And then other health concerns. I know of a friend who complains about, he drives an automatic vehicle, so complains that the left leg is gradually becoming inactive because he's not using it, because he gets stuck in traffic. So always complain about the knee and all of that. And again, I'm sure people are sitting here, they can't sit. If you sit in the office for very long hours, there's a health concern. The doctors will tell you that you'll begin to have problem with your nerves. And you don't see that probably until you cross the 60 years, 70 years, then you begin to, something they call sciatica. I don't know whether you've experienced it. But if you sit in the office for 7 hours all day, meetings, and you come and sit in the vehicle for 4 or 5 hours, then you are spending greater part of the time trying to sit. Some of you have even bought watches that will tell you that you can stand up and walk. But in traffic, you can't stand up and walk. So then it's of no use. That is the problem that we go through. Then the obvious one has suggested that we've gone past the minimum threshold that we need to be able, in terms of air quality. And they attribute that basically to emission from our vehicles. It's even more pronounced because most of our vehicles are overaged. Okay. Technically, if you have a vehicle that is 7, 8 years, saloon vehicle, the value is 0. In Ghana, 10 years, and they are selling it 700,000 Ghana cedi, 500,000 Ghana cedi. So we have taken delight in buying overage vehicles because probably we can't pay the duties, and we are contributing. People are more comfortable bringing overage vehicles to pay duties and penalty on them than buying brand new vehicles. Okay, but again, the cost to society is a problem. So when people are walking by the roadside and they are inhaling, or even when you are driving behind some of the vehicles and they press the accelerator, you need to slow down because you can't see. And there are a lot of them. And the irony is that they've all passed the road where they examine. Okay? So this is one problem that we need to talk about. They have a threshold of 10 grams per cubic meters, but Ghana has exceeded that by 30, almost 21 more. And that is a problem that we need to talk about. Prolonged exposure, we are told, to traffic-related air pollution, it leads to respiratory diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and other health concerns. Okay, both one to the traffic worker and then to the urban residents. And illness caused by ambient air quality alone in Ghana, and this is according to the WHO in 2018, resulted in 3,000 fatalities. Okay, so gradually we are inhaling it, and by the time we realize it's out of hand, and we need to look at that. So based on some of the problems or the difficulties the urban dwellers go through, the question is, what do we do? Okay. And these proposals, again, I made them a year ago, and the Ministry of Local Government, because most of them, they had to initiate it, and I'm happy they are here. So I want to reiterate them again, and then see what can be done. The first is that people move for a reason. There's always a reason for movement. And until we understand the relationship between transportation and land use, whatever we do will be of no use. If you observe the traffic patterns or the congestion patterns, in the morning it's heading one way, in the evening it's heading the other way. So what it means is that until we find a better way to integrate our land use and transport planning regime, we will not be able to succeed. So we need to do that. And closely related to that is the fact that if people live in communities where movement is minimized, then there is no need to move. So the basic essentials will be there. What our planning school were taught as neighborhoods is what we are advocating, that as much as possible, when people live in certain areas, they should be able to get all the things that they need. If it becomes essential, then the movement is minimized. And when that is done, there is no worry in terms of congestion. The next is that we prepare land use plans, we prepare spatial plans, we prepare development plans. What we need is to also prepare local transport plans. So we need some thematic maps or plans to be able to guide it. And so when you have a local transport plan, it essentially will be able to guide every activity. Where are the parking areas within the neighborhood? What are the crossings? How do you connect movement within your jurisdiction, so that you can properly reassign traffic when there's the need? So we expect that as part of our mandate in preparing the plans, we need to see what future our cities in terms of our transportation and the environment that we want to promote. So we need to look at that. Then we also want to encourage the MMDAs and the private sector to work together to provide public transport service. I am not a believer of government running some of the services. They usually don't do them well. But if you have a private sector that can partner, okay, then they have the opportunity to provide a public transport service so that those who are in need can be able to have these needs met. If not, it becomes a problem for most of our people. Well, we'll be happy. If you don't plan them well, it will come back to bite us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Well done. Another round of applause. Very exciting presentations. I want you to relax in the cushion there. Don't come down just yet. Just relax more. I think that your video was extremely interesting. Could identify with it. You've given us a considerable presentation on the causes of congestion. You defined it. Our road networks unable to accommodate the volume of traffic, slower speeds, travel times, increased vehicular queues. You've talked about the unreliable and unsafe transport system, which has created a vacuum, and also the options that are coming in, but also drew our attention to the fact that walking as an option is quite dangerous because of the absence of good pedestrian infrastructure. Talked about increased travel times, high costs of travel. You also talked about the problem, the forfeiture of travel with implications for business, the issues of trauma and stress. If I can digress, I always sit at the back of my car. It's a tacit agreement between me and my driver, because when I sit by him, I help him to drive. And then we stress, and then I pump, Babengno, move him from the road. And it stresses him out. So now I sit at the back so that I don't tell him to Babengno. Yeah, moving on. So the stresses that you proffer solutions, promote integrated land use and transport planning, redevelop informal settlements, prepare local transport plans, the partnership between MMDAs and private sector, focus on age and disability-friendly transport planning regime. Sometimes in this country we had what we call the urban cards for older persons, but like many other solutions, it fizzled out. Prioritize public transport systems, integrate the transport options, and develop the National Transport Poverty Index. Very important. It's not something that we've given a lot of energy to. And then planning the future of transport, including the consideration to electric vehicles. The conference, which will come on later this year, should be interesting. Prof, thank you for a very exciting presentation. Folks, I want to open this up for some questions, some contributions. One person, one contribution, because I only have about 30 minutes for that. And then let's see how it goes. And my friend, work with me. Don't go with your own, otherwise I'll know you, okay? Who's number one? Okay, number one. Then come up here to number two, to Professor Inkum. And then, okay, let's do it one. Or you people to why? Pass you to why? 1, 2, 3. Professor Inkum, you've moved to 4. My apologies. 5, and then I've closed. Go ahead. 1.
Prof, thank you for...
Social-cultural, just one man,
yes.
One machete. Go ahead.
Thank you for my presentation. At the last part, development of National Transport Poverty Index.
Yeah.
My question is it achievable? Can we do? And if you can do, can you put timeline on it? And what resources do we need to get to achieve that? Thank you.
Yeah, mine is on the walkability and then the pedestrianization of our roads. I can see Madam Pat Oni is here. We've been in the ecosystem for some time. It's the working of the development planners in the assembly together with the urban roads engineers on the construction of our access roads and then the routes that we have, that you can see a very reasonable right of way. But when it's time to construct the road is relatively narrow. No laybys. We don't even plan the drains to cover them, and also we don't also provide walkways along the roads. It's like it's an afterthought. Then at the end of the day, it's difficult to move on the main carriageway, and it causes a lot of problems that Prof talked about. So we should work together to pedestrianize our roads and consciously build that walkability along our routes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation. Mine is on the issue of persons with disabilities. I think the solutions usually, aside the economic aspects where the elderly, I think one thing which is greatly missing is that of tactile pavement. And for tactile pavement, it's not expensive. You go to University of Ghana campus, you have lots of persons with visual impairments and all those. Just the crossings. I think that even when we start from the university campus, introduce tactile pavements and then scale it up to our urban settings, it can assist these persons with disabilities to easily move around the city. So I think that's one key thing that I'll plead that we can start with, particularly for the persons with disabilities. Thank you.
So number 4 is up here, please.
Thank you very much for the presentation. A question I have is, are you trying to say that many of us here are mental cases? And if you have data to substantiate that, and what you recommend we do, so that we don't go down the drain.
Okay. Number 5 is behind. Yes. Okay.
And thank you very much, Prof, for the presentation. So mine has to do with some of the solutions that you are proposing. That is the integrated land use planning, or even one was transport plans also. To some extent, we can say there is a bit of integration already. But the problem lies with the actual preparation of the plans. Who prepares the plans? There's something that I have been saying, that there is a particular document that we are dilly-dallying with as a nation, but that is the bedrock of development, which are the planning schemes. Because you cannot implement any project, regardless of the nature of the project. It could even be, even if you are developing missile interceptors, but you still need the service of the local plan. But the issue is that, who are the people who are handling this plan? When you go to the spatial planning manuals that we are dealing with in the field, you take the manual.
So let me from my professor. My professor taught me first, so I cannot say that. I can't say the rest. so the point here is, I think that for me, we don't have serious data on that. But yes, the one that if you have high blood pressure, and they can establish a correlation between that and the daily stress, routine stress of your work and all of that. But the documents that I chanced on says that if the moment you become hyper and you scream and you do those things, the doctors or the medical practitioners have told us automatically has a relationship with that as to whether the sustained period, because it becomes a lifestyle, we do that every day, whether that is contributing to our higher BPs that we are recording or our headaches, our migraines, is something that we need to check. So, Prof. Nkume will do that and then share the results with you and anybody who is interested. The second issue that I want to add is that for making provision for them does not mean anything, honestly, because I have visited planning authorities where after the master plan, there's a whole transportation plan, there's a whole utility plan, where there are detailed drawings of where every line, for example, if it's a sewer line, where every line is passing. And that may not be an expertise that you, the plan officer, might have. But they have what they call planning authorities, which brings about a team of all the professionals. If you get somebody who's a highway engineer, he can design a very good right-of-way easily for you. Because the roads that they have on, the urban roads, feeder roads are working on, they design the alignments. When it's beyond them and they look for consultants.
Rail water system for our cities. It would have been great to travel here by a small speedboat to this hotel. Prof, can you shed light on the average travel distances people walk to access services. Can you scroll up a bit for me? Yeah. Ferry should be able to transport people from Tema, I think it's Tema, to Accra. Can trams be used in our cities? Hey, are they cheaper than trains? Railway transport is very expensive, but it solves most of the congestion issues in our major cities. And so they've talked about...
Finance Minister Uban was so passionate about having water transport in parts of Accra, and we needed to do that. I think